The massive crystal spires of Zephyrian Galactic Academy stretched toward the purple sky like frozen lightning. Alex Carter pressed his face against the transport window, watching the enormous structures grow larger as they approached. He had dreamed of this moment for 3 years, ever since Earth had been accepted into the Galactic Education Exchange Program. "Would you look at that?" Katie Brooks whispered from the seat beside him. Her voice carried the same mixture of excitement and nervousness that Alex felt churning in his stomach. "I can't believe we actually made it." Ryan Webb leaned forward from the row behind them. "My dad's gonna flip when he sees the pictures. He still thinks this is all some elaborate prank." Ryan's Texas drawl seemed oddly out of place as alien landscapes rushed past below them. The transport pilot, a being that looked like a walking tree with too many eyes, announced their arrival in a voice that sounded like wind through leaves. Alex grabbed his backpack and checked his acceptance letter for the 100th time. The official seal of the Academy gleamed holographically in the corner, proving this wasn't just an incredibly vivid dream. As they disembarked, Alex felt the strange sensation of artificial gravity that was just slightly different from Earth's. The air tasted metallic and carried scents he couldn't identify. Around them, beings from dozens of different worlds moved with purpose across the landing platform. Some floated, others skittered on multiple legs, and a few looked almost human, except for their blue skin or extra arms. "Welcome to Zephyrian Academy," said a tall, elegant being with silver skin and enormous black eyes. "I am Coordinator Thress. You must be our human exchange students." Alex, Katie, and Ryan nodded in unison. They had practiced this moment during their preparation classes on Earth, but nothing could have prepared them for actually standing on an alien world, surrounded by creatures from across the galaxy. "You are making history," Coordinator Thress continued, her voice melodic and strange. "In our 300 years of operation, we have never admitted students from a Class 12 Deathworld. Your species' acceptance represents a significant experiment in inclusive education." The word experiment made Alex's stomach tighten. He exchanged glances with Katie and Ryan. During their preparation, they had learned that Earth was classified as a death world, but no one had explained exactly what that meant. The classification had seemed like paperwork, not something that would define how others saw them. Coordinator Thress led them through corridors that seemed to pulse with their own light. Students moved past in groups, their conversations creating a symphony of alien languages. Alex noticed how the other students looked at them. Some stared openly, others whispered to their companions, and a few quickly looked away when the humans made eye contact. "Your dormitory assignments are unique," Coordinator Thress explained as they walked. "Typically, we house students with others from similar environmental backgrounds. However, your homeworld's extreme conditions mean you will be housed together, with specially modified atmospheric controls." "Extreme conditions?" Katie asked. "What do you mean?" Coordinator Thress paused, her large eyes blinking slowly. "Your world's gravity is nearly twice that of most civilized planets. Your atmospheric composition would be toxic to 70% of our student body. The temperature variations your species considers normal would require emergency environmental suits for most beings. And the wildlife." She shuddered delicately. "The predatory life forms on your world are the subject of cautionary tales in most galactic safety courses." Alex felt confused. Earth had always seemed perfectly normal to him. Sure, they had to. Be careful around bears and poisonous snakes, and everyone knew to check for dangerous weather, but that was just common sense. "I guess we never thought about it that way," he said. Their dormitory was in a section of the academy Alex privately nicknamed the Human Wing. The rooms were smaller than the others they had passed, with what Coordinator Thress called reinforced construction to handle their enhanced physical requirements. Alex wasn't sure what that meant, but the furniture did seem unusually sturdy. "Classes begin tomorrow," Coordinator Thress said. "Your academic advisors have selected courses appropriate for your developmental level and species capabilities. We have high hopes for this cultural exchange." After she left, the three humans sat in Alex's room, trying to process everything they had experienced. Through the window, they could see alien students moving across courtyards that looked like crystalline gardens. "Did you notice how everyone looked at us?" Katie asked. "Like we were dangerous or something." That coordinator lady seemed scared. "Of Earth," Ryan added. "Makes you wonder what they've heard about us." Alex pulled up his class schedule on the room's holographic display. "Comparative Survival Studies with Dr. Velkanos," he read aloud. "Introduction to Galactic Diplomacy, Basic Xenobiology, and Applied Environmental Sciences." "Survival Studies sounds interesting," Katie said, looking at her own schedule. "I wonder what that involves." The next morning, Alex woke to an artificial sunrise that gradually brightened their windows. The Academy's designers had tried to simulate natural daylight cycles for the comfort of diurnal species. As he got ready for his first day of classes, Alex felt the same nervous excitement he had experienced starting high school back in Colorado. The dining hall was a marvel of engineering, with different sections providing appropriate nutrition for hundreds of different species. The human section served recognizable foods, though everything tasted slightly off in ways Alex couldn't identify. As they ate breakfast, Alex overheard conversations from nearby tables. Most were in alien languages, but the universal translator in his earpiece picked up fragments. "The new Deathworlders are here," whispered a being that looked like a jellyfish with arms. "I heard their homeworld has carnivorous plants that can devour a full-grown Zentarian." "My cousin serves in the Galactic Patrol," added a creature covered in what looked like metallic fur. "She says human explorers have been found alive in conditions that would kill anyone else within minutes. They don't even seem to notice when they're in mortal danger." Alex nearly choked on his orange juice. Mortal danger? He thought about his summer job working construction, the camping trips with his family, and the time he had gotten lost hiking in the mountains. None of that had seemed particularly dangerous at the time. As they walked to their first class, Alex realized that this year was going to be more interesting than any of them had expected. Whatever Earth was like compared to the rest of the galaxy, they were about to find out exactly why humans had such a strange reputation among the stars. The adventure was just beginning. The Comparative Survival Studies classroom looked like something from a science fiction movie. Holographic displays showed rotating planets, environmental data streamed across floating screens, and the walls themselves seemed to shift between different planetary landscapes. Alex, Katie, and Ryan found seats near the back, trying to blend in with their alien classmates. Dr. Velkanos entered the room with the fluid grace of his crystalline species. His body appeared to be made of living diamond, refracting light in patterns that hurt to look at directly. When he spoke, his voice resonated like musical chimes. "Welcome to Comparative Survival Studies," Dr. Velkanos announced. "This course examines how intelligent species adapt to hostile environments. We will study theoretical scenarios that test the limits of biological and technological adaptation." A student near the front raised what might have been a hand. Professor, why do we call them theoretical scenarios? Dr. Velkanos's crystalline features shifted in what Alex assumed was the equivalent of a smile. Because these environments are so hostile that no civilized being would ever encounter them in reality. We study them to understand the absolute limits of survival science. Alex felt a growing sense of unease. During their preparation on Earth, nobody had mentioned that this would be an advanced theoretical course. He had signed up because it sounded practical and interesting. Your major project this semester will be conducted in teams, Dr. Velkanos continued. Each team will design survival strategies for increasingly challenging planetary scenarios. You will have access to our simulation laboratories and unlimited theoretical resources. The professor began assigning teams based on species compatibility and atmospheric requirements. Alex wasn't surprised when he, Katie, and Ryan were grouped together. What did surprise him was the reaction of their classmates. The Deathworlders. Get their own team, whispered a blue-skinned student who looked almost human except for her gills. I suppose that makes sense. They probably think differently about survival than civilized species. A tall, thin being covered in fur leaned toward his teammate. My homeworld's Environmental Studies Department published a paper about Earth. The mortality rates for standard exploration missions are astronomical. They estimate that 90% of galactic species would die within hours of landing there. Katie raised her hand. Excuse me, Professor. What exactly makes a planet a death world? Dr. Velkanos turned his attention to her, his crystalline body chiming softly. An excellent question, Miss Brooks. A death world classification indicates a planet with multiple environmental factors that pose immediate threats to most known forms of life. Class 12. Death worlds like your Earth represent the extreme end of this scale. He activated a holographic display showing Earth from space. Your homeworld features crushing gravity, toxic atmospheric conditions for most species, extreme temperature, variations, frequent natural disasters, and an unusually high concentration of predatory life forms. The combination makes it virtually uninhabitable for civilized beings. Alex stared at the familiar blue and green marble rotating slowly in the hologram. This was Earth? The place he had grown up playing baseball and riding his bike to school? The planet where his biggest worry had been passing his driver's test? The first scenario for your project, Dr. Velkanos announced, involves survival on a planet with 1.2 times standard galactic gravity, temperature variations between -10 and +40 degrees Celsius, and the presence of large, predatory animals. You have 2 weeks to design a comprehensive survival strategy. Students throughout the classroom began pulling out advanced tablets and immediately started accessing databases. Alex heard fragments of conversations about gravitational compensation, suits, environmental control systems, and predator deterrent technologies. Ryan leaned over to Alex and Katie. Did he just describe a pretty normal day back home? Katie nodded, looking confused. That temperature range is like spring weather in Michigan, and 1.2 gravity? That's barely noticeable. Alex was thinking about the large, predatory animals part of the scenario. My uncle hunts elk in Colorado. Are we supposed to be scared of something bigger than an elk? Their teammates began working immediately, accessing vast databases of environmental technologies. The blue-skinned student with gills was researching atmospheric processors. A group of insectoid beings was calculating the metabolic costs of moving in higher gravity. Near them, a team of what looked like walking plants was designing portable environmental habitats. Should we start researching too? Katie asked, looking at the intense activity around them. Alex pulled out his tablet, but found himself staring at the scenario description instead of accessing databases. You know what? Let me just think through this step by step. He started sketching on his tablet with a simple drawing program. Okay, so we land on this planet. First thing is shelter, right? We need something that protects us from weather and keeps predators out. Ryan nodded. Basic lean-to construction should work. Find some sturdy trees, use rope or vines to lash together a frame, cover it with branches and leaves for insulation. What about the gravity? Katie asked. Alex shrugged. 1.2 isn't that much higher than Earth normal. We might get tired a little faster, but it's not like we'd need special equipment. Food and water, Ryan continued. We'd need to identify local plants and animals that are safe to eat. Set up some basic traps for small game, maybe try fishing, if there's water nearby. Katie was taking notes. What about the predators? Same as dealing with bears or mountain lions back home, Alex said. Make noise when you move around. Don't leave food scraps near your shelter. Carry a big stick. Know how to make yourself look bigger if you face one down. As they talked through the scenario, Alex noticed their conversation getting quieter. Other teams were still deep in technical research, but the humans had been drawing curious glances from nearby students. Fire, Ryan added. Most animals are afraid of fire, plus we need it for cooking, warmth, and signaling for rescue. How do you make fire without technology? Asked a voice behind them. Alex turned to see the blue-skinned student watching them, with obvious curiosity. Friction method is probably easiest, Katie replied automatically. Find some dry wood, make a small bow, use it to spin a stick really fast against another piece of wood until you get an ember. Then transfer that to some tinder and blow gently until it catches. The blue-skinned student stared at her. You can create combustion with just organic materials? Sure, Ryan said. My dad taught me when I was 8. It's basic camping stuff. Alex looked around the classroom and realized that every team within earshot had stopped their research and was listening to their conversation. The intense academic atmosphere had shifted to something that felt more like curiosity about an alien species. Dr. Velkanos approached their table, his crystalline form chiming with each step. I couldn't help but overhear your discussion. Are you suggesting that your species could survive this scenario without technological assistance? Alex felt suddenly self-conscious. Well, yeah. I mean, it wouldn't be comfortable, but people do this kind of thing for fun back home. It's called camping. The professor's crystalline features shifted in what Alex was beginning to recognize as surprise. For recreational purposes? Summer camp, hunting trips, hiking expeditions, Katie explained. Lots of humans spend their free time in wilderness areas that sound a lot like this scenario. Dr. Velkanos stood silently for a long moment, his body refracting the classroom's light in patterns that seemed to indicate deep thought. Finally, he spoke. Class dismissed for today. I need to review the curriculum parameters for this course. As students filed out, chattering excitedly in dozens of languages, Alex caught fragments of translated conversations. Words like impossible, primitive, and terrifying seemed to come up frequently. Walking back to their dormitory, Katie shook her head. I think we just accidentally freaked out our professor. Maybe we should have pretended the scenario was harder than it actually is, Ryan suggested. Alex wasn't so sure. Something told him that their semester was about to become much more interesting than any of them had expected. 2 weeks had passed since the first survival scenario, and Dr. Velkanos had been acting strangely. Alex noticed the professor watching them during class, his crystalline features shifting in patterns that seemed to indicate intense concentration. Today, he was announcing the results of their first project. The Velkarian team has designed an impressive gravitational compensation system, Dr. Velkanos announced, his voice chiming through the classroom. Their environmental suits would allow comfortable movement in elevated gravity conditions, though the energy requirements would necessitate regular recharging stations. The team of tall gray beings nodded with satisfaction. Their presentation had included detailed schematics for powered exoskeletons and portable fusion reactors. The Gentari Collective has proposed an elegant atmospheric processing solution, the professor continued. Their mobile habitat would maintain optimal conditions while providing protection from predatory threats. Estimated construction time would be 6 months using standard colonial equipment. Alex looked at the insectoid team's holographic display, showing a dome-shaped structure that looked like it could house a small city. The cost estimates scrolling beside it had enough zeros to fund a small planet's economy. The Aquinas Group has developed sophisticated biotechnology applications, Dr. Velkanos said, gesturing toward the jellyfish-like beings. Their symbiotic organisms would provide enhanced physical capabilities and environmental adaptation. Implementation would require 18 months of genetic conditioning. Each team's presentation was more elaborate than the last. Advanced technologies, massive resource requirements, and time frames measured in months or years. Alex began to feel increasingly uncomfortable about their own simple solution. Finally, Dr. Velkanos said, his attention focusing on the human team, our Deathworld representatives have submitted their survival strategy. Alex stood up, holding their single page of handwritten notes. Around the classroom, holographic displays dimmed as attention focused on them. Well, we figured you'd land near water if possible, since that's where most life concentrates. First, priority is shelter. He felt foolish describing their basic lean-to design while surrounded by architectural marvels and technological solutions. You'd want to get off the ground because of moisture and insects. Find some sturdy trees, use rope or vines to make a frame, pile up branches and leaves for walls and roof. Katie took over the presentation. Water's usually the next priority, but if you land near a stream or lake, you just need to boil it to make it safe. Fire's easy to make with a bow drill or flint and steel if you have it. For food, Ryan continued, you'd look for familiar plants first. Things like berries, nuts, roots that you can recognize. Small game traps are pretty simple to build. Fish traps if there's water. Most predators avoid humans if you make noise and don't act like prey. Alex concluded their presentation. Time needed for setup would be maybe half a day for basic shelter, another day to establish water and food sources. No special equipment required beyond basic tools like knives and rope. The classroom was completely silent. Alex looked around at their classmates' faces, seeing expressions he couldn't interpret on alien features. Dr. Velkanos's crystalline body had gone completely still. "Half a day?" asked the blue-skinned student they had met before. Her gills fluttered nervously. "You could establish a survival base in half a day?" "Basic survival," Katie clarified. "Obviously, you'd want to improve things over time, but that's enough to stay alive indefinitely." Dr. Velkanos finally spoke. "Class dismissed. Please prepare for Scenario 2, which I will announce next session." As students filed out, Alex heard whispered conversations in multiple languages. The universal. Translator picked up fragments. Impossible. Primitive solutions. How do they survive anything? The next class session brought Scenario 2. A planet with dangerous radiation levels, toxic atmosphere, and extreme temperature swings between day and night. Dr. Velkanos announced that teams would need to develop protection against environmental hazards that would be lethal within hours of exposure. Teams immediately began researching radiation shielding technologies, atmospheric filtration systems, and thermal regulation equipment. The Valkyrian team proposed underground bunker complexes. The Gentari designed sealed habitats with independent life support. The Aquanis suggested biological adaptations that would take years to implement. Alex, Katie, and Ryan huddled around their table, looking at the scenario parameters. Radiation, Alex said thoughtfully. How bad are we talking? Ryan checked the specific measurements. These levels would give you radiation poisoning pretty quick, but it's not like standing next to a nuclear reactor or anything. My dad worked cleanup after that reactor accident in Nevada, Katie said. They used lead-lined clothing and rotated shifts to limit exposure. Could we build something similar? Alex was thinking about materials science classes from high school. Lead's really heavy, but you could probably find dense metals on most planets. Maybe build a shelter with thick walls, limit time outside, cover exposed skin. What about the toxic atmosphere? Ryan asked. Gas mask, Katie said simply. Or just hold your breath for short trips outside. How toxic are we talking? Alex checked the atmospheric composition. Looks like sulfur compounds and some heavy metals. Nasty stuff. But a simple filter system should work. Charcoal, cloth, maybe some basic chemistry to neutralize the worst components. Temperature swings, Ryan noted. -40 to +60 Celsius. That's cold, but not impossibly cold, Alex said. Good insulation, layer your clothing, stay active during cold periods. The hot periods would be rough, but people work in desert conditions that hot. As they discussed practical solutions, Alex became aware that their conversation was once again drawing attention from nearby teams. Students had stopped researching advanced technologies and were listening to the humans talk about improvised solutions to lethal environmental hazards. Dr. Velkanos approached their table, his crystalline form chiming with agitation. You are suggesting that your species could survive this environment with improvised equipment? It wouldn't be fun, Ryan admitted. But yeah, probably. People have survived in similar conditions before. Similar conditions? The professor's voice rose to a higher pitch. This scenario represents environmental hazards that would require emergency evacuation protocols for most galactic species. Katie looked confused. Have you guys never dealt with industrial accidents or natural disasters? Sometimes you have to make do with whatever's available. Dr. Velkanos stood silently for a long moment. When he spoke again, his voice was barely audible. Your homeworld experiences conditions requiring these adaptation techniques? Well, sure, Alex said. Earthquakes, volcanic eruptions, chemical spills, extreme weather. There's always something happening somewhere. The classroom had gone completely quiet again. Alex could see their classmates staring at them with expressions that looked like a mixture of horror and fascination. How? Asked the Valkyrian team leader in a voice like breaking glass. Does your species function in a constant state of environmental crisis? Alex, Katie, and Ryan exchanged glances. They had never thought of Earth as being in a constant state of crisis. It was just normal. You adapt, Katie said finally. You learn to deal with problems as they come up. You help each other out when things get bad, and you always have backup plans. Dr. Velkanos dismissed class early again, but this time Alex noticed him taking detailed notes on his tablet. As they left the classroom, Alex couldn't shake the feeling that they were being studied more intensely than they were studying. That evening, Alex found himself looking up information about other worlds in the galactic database. What he discovered made him understand their classmates' reactions a little better. Most civilized planets had carefully controlled environments, advanced warning systems for any dangers, and immediate technological responses to any threats. The idea of a species that just dealt with lethal hazards as part of daily life seemed to be completely outside their experience. Alex began to wonder what their professor was really learning from this class, and whether the humans were the students or the subjects of his research. Dr. Velkanos entered the classroom carrying a sealed data tablet, his crystalline features darker than usual. Alex had learned to read the professor's mood through the patterns of light refraction in his body, and today those patterns suggested something between excitement and dread. Today we discuss the final scenario, Dr. Velkanos announced, his voice carrying unusual tension. I must warn you that this scenario has never been attempted practically by any class in the Academy's history. It exists purely as a theoretical exercise in survival impossibility. He activated the main holographic display, and Alex felt his stomach sink as data filled the air around them. The planet shown was a nightmare of natural disasters. Active volcanism, frequent earthquakes, extreme weather patterns, and a complete absence of technological infrastructure. Scenario parameters, Dr. Velkanos read from his tablet. Total technological failure has left you stranded on an unstable world. No advanced equipment functions. The environment features constant seismic activity, unpredictable volcanic eruptions, severe storms, temperature extremes, and hostile wildlife. Your objective is not merely survival, but establishing a sustainable community that could persist indefinitely. Around the classroom, alien students made sounds that Alex's translator identified as expressions of horror and disbelief. The Velkarian team leader's crystalline voice cracked as she spoke. Professor, surely this scenario exceeds the parameters of educational simulation. No rational being would attempt practical application of such conditions. Dr. Velkanos's body chimed with what Alex now recognized as dark amusement. Indeed, previous classes have used this scenario only for theoretical discussion about the absolute limits of survival possibility. The resource requirements for technological solutions would exceed the gross planetary product of most civilized worlds. The Gentari team leader buzzed anxiously. Our preliminary calculations suggest that establishing basic environmental protection would require manufacturing capabilities equivalent to a major industrial complex. The energy requirements alone are astronomical. The biological adaptation requirements, added an Aquinas student, would necessitate genetic modification over multiple generations, and even then, survival probability would remain negligible. Alex, Katie, and Ryan sat quietly as their classmates discussed the impossibility of the scenario. Teams began requesting permission to treat this as a purely theoretical exercise, arguing that practical solutions were beyond the scope of any reasonable academic project. Dr. Velkanos listened to each request with growing satisfaction. When the last team had formally requested theoretical-only status, he turned his attention to the humans. "And what is your team's position on this final scenario?" Alex looked at his teammates, then at the environmental data still floating in the holographic display. "Could we get some clarification on a few points?" The classroom fell silent. Dr. Velkanos's crystalline form chimed with surprise. "Clarification?" "Yeah," Ryan said, studying the geological data. "How active is the volcanism? Are we talking about constant eruptions or just occasional activity? And what's the warning time for major seismic events?" Katie was examining the weather patterns. The storm systems look pretty severe, but they seem to follow seasonal patterns. Are there predictable, safe zones during major weather events? Also, Alex added, looking at the biological survey data, what kind of wildlife are we dealing with? The predator-to-prey ratios look pretty normal for an Earth-type ecosystem. Dr. Velkanos stared at them for a long moment. You are asking for tactical information rather than requesting theoretical status? Well, sure, Alex said. We need to understand the environment before we can plan for it. The silence in the classroom was deafening. Alex could hear his own heartbeat and the quiet humming of the Academy's environmental systems. Every alien student was staring at them with expressions of complete disbelief. You are seriously considering a practical approach to this scenario? Asked the blue-skinned student, her gills fluttering rapidly with what Alex now recognized as extreme agitation. Katie nodded. It looks challenging, but not impossible. My grandparents homesteaded in Alaska back when it was still pretty wild. They dealt with earthquakes, harsh weather, and dangerous animals for decades. Without technology? Dr. Velkanos asked, his voice rising to a crystalline shriek. Well, basic technology, Ryan clarified. Hand tools, simple machines, that kind of thing. Nothing that requires industrial infrastructure to maintain. Alex was warming to the problem. The volcanic activity actually provides some advantages. Geothermal energy for heating, fertile soil for agriculture, and natural barriers against some predators. You just need to locate settlements away from active vents and have evacuation plans for major eruptions. Evacuation plans, whispered an Aquinas student. You would remain on a world where evacuation is necessary? Earthquakes give warning signs if you know what to look for, Katie explained. Animals act nervous. Small tremors increase. Sometimes there are changes in groundwater. People in earthquake zones learn to read these signs. And the storms? Asked a Velkarian student. Seasonal patterns mean you can predict the worst weather and prepare for it, Ryan said. Build sturdy shelters, stockpile food and water, wait it out. Storms always pass eventually. Dr. Velkanos set down his tablet with a sharp, crystalline chime. Class dismissed. I need to review the practical implementation protocols for advanced survival scenarios. As students filed out of the classroom, Alex heard frantic conversations in multiple languages. The universal translator struggled with emotional content, but words like insane, impossible, and deathworld madness came through clearly. Walking back to their dormitory, the three humans discussed the scenario in more detail. It's basically like settling the American frontier, Katie observed. People did that with nothing but hand tools and whatever they could carry in wagons. Or like those reality shows where people try to survive in wilderness areas, Ryan added. Except instead of doing it for a month, you're doing it permanently. Alex was thinking about his great-grandfather's stories about growing up on a farm during the Great Depression. People have started over from nothing before. The key is starting small and building up gradually. You don't try to recreate civilization overnight. That evening, Alex found a message waiting on his dormitory room's communication system. Dr. Velkanos wanted to meet with the human team privately the next morning before class. Alex lay awake that night, wondering what they had gotten themselves into. The scenario was definitely more challenging than anything they had discussed so far, but it didn't seem impossible. Difficult, dangerous, requiring careful planning and constant adaptation, but not impossible. He thought about the expressions on their classmates' faces when they had discussed practical solutions. For beings from stable, technologically advanced worlds, The idea of voluntarily living without technological safety nets seemed to represent something beyond their comprehension. Alex began to suspect that this class was teaching him as much about his alien classmates as it was teaching them about survival. The gulf between Deathworld and civilized world perspectives was much wider than any of them had realized. Tomorrow's meeting with Dr. Velkanos would probably provide some answers, but Alex had a growing suspicion that the real experiment in this class wasn't about survival techniques. It was about understanding why some species could contemplate surviving the unsurvivable, while others couldn't even imagine trying. Dr. Velkanos' private office was a crystalline chamber that seemed to exist inside a living gemstone. Light flowed through the walls in patterns that hurt Alex's eyes if he looked directly at them. The professor sat behind a desk that appeared to be carved from a single massive crystal, his body reflecting and refracting the room's strange illumination. "Please sit," Dr. Velkanos said, gesturing to chairs that looked uncomfortably alien but turned out to be surprisingly comfortable. "I have a proposition that goes far beyond the scope of normal academic work." Alex, Katie, and Ryan exchanged nervous glances. Over the past month, their survival studies class had become increasingly strange, with Dr. Velkanos watching them like they were fascinating specimens rather than students. "Your responses to the survival scenarios have generated significant interest among the Academy's research faculty," the professor continued. "The casual manner in which you discuss solutions to lethal environmental challenges has prompted questions about the fundamental assumptions underlying galactic survival science." Katie leaned forward. "What kind of questions?" Dr. Velkanos activated a holographic display showing data from their class discussions. "For 3 centuries, survival studies has been a theoretical discipline. We study impossible scenarios as intellectual exercises, never expecting anyone to actually implement the solutions. Your species treats these theoretical impossibilities as practical problems with obvious solutions." "Because they are practical problems," Ryan said. "Difficult ones, but not impossible." "Precisely," Dr. Velkanos chimed with excitement, "which brings me to my proposition. The Academy has approved a controlled practical test of your final scenario. We want to observe how your species actually implements these theoretical survival techniques." Alex felt a chill run down his spine. "You want us to actually try surviving on that nightmare planet?" "Not the actual planet described in the scenario," Dr. Velkanos clarified quickly. "We have access to a small, uninhabited moon with similar but less extreme conditions. Monitored environment, emergency extraction capabilities, full medical support standing by. The test would last 1 week." "What's the catch?" Katie asked suspiciously. Dr. Velkanos' crystalline features shifted in what Alex had learned was embarrassment. "The rest of the faculty believes this test will demonstrate the limitations of primitive survival techniques. They expect you to require immediate rescue within the first day." "And you think differently?" Alex asked. "I think," Dr. Velkanos said, slowly, "that this test will fundamentally change how the galaxy understands survival, adaptation, and the true capabilities of Deathworld species." The professor activated another display showing the test moon's environmental data. "Gravity is 1.3 times galactic standard. Atmosphere is breathable but thin. Temperature ranges from -20 to +50 Celsius. Local wildlife includes predators roughly equivalent to your Earth's large carnivores. No technological infrastructure whatsoever." Ryan studied the data with growing interest. "What equipment do we get?" "Basic hand tools only. Knives, rope, fire-starting materials, first aid supplies." Nothing that requires power or advanced manufacturing to maintain. Alex looked at his teammates. Katie was studying the geological data with the focused attention she usually reserved for her hardest classes. Ryan was examining the biological survey information, already thinking through food and shelter requirements. "There's something you're not telling us," Alex said. "This feels like more than just an academic exercise." Dr. Velkanos was quiet for a long moment, his crystalline body cycling through patterns of light that suggested deep uncertainty. "Your species is unique in the galaxy. Every other civilization has developed along similar paths. Environmental, control, technological solutions to survival challenges, careful management of risk. You are the only known species that thrives in uncontrolled environments." "So?" Katie asked. "So the galaxy is larger and more dangerous than most civilizations want to acknowledge. There are worlds where our technology fails, situations where our careful planning proves inadequate, environments where traditional galactic solutions simply don't work." Alex began to understand. "You're not just studying survival techniques. You're studying us." "I am studying why one species succeeded where others would fail," Dr. Velkanos confirmed. "Why deathworlders not only survive, but seem to thrive under conditions that would destroy civilized beings. This test isn't about proving you can survive. It's about understanding how you survive." Ryan leaned back in his chair. "What happens if we say no?" "Nothing negative," Dr. Velkanos assured them. "You complete the course with full academic credit, but you miss the opportunity to demonstrate capabilities that could change how the galaxy views your species." Katie was studying the environmental data with renewed interest. "1 week on an uninhabited moon with basic tools. It's like an extreme camping trip, with alien wildlife and no backup plan beyond emergency extraction," Alex pointed out. "Come on," Ryan said with a grin. "How often do you get the chance to be test subjects for first contact science? Besides, it sounds like fun." Alex thought about his great-grandfather's stories, his uncle's hunting expeditions, his own experiences camping in the Colorado mountains. None of those had involved alien predators or unknown ecosystems, but the basic principles were the same. "What kind of monitoring are we talking about?" Alex asked. "Passive observation only," Dr. Velkanos replied. "Cameras, environmental sensors, medical monitoring from orbit. No communication, no assistance, no intervention unless you trigger emergency extraction beacons." "And if we succeed?" Katie asked. Dr. Velkanos's crystalline features brightened. "If you succeed, you will have demonstrated that theoretical survival science has practical applications. You will have proven that deathworld adaptation techniques have value beyond academic curiosity." Alex looked at his teammates again. Katie's expression showed the same mixture of excitement and determination he remembered from her decision to apply for the Galactic Exchange program. Ryan looked like someone who had just been challenged to prove something important about humanity. "We'll do it," Alex said. Dr. Velkanos chimed with what sounded like relief mixed with anticipation. "Excellent. Transport to the test moon is scheduled for tomorrow morning. You have the rest of today to prepare." As they left the professor's office, Alex felt the same nervous excitement he had experienced before his first solo camping trip. The stakes were higher this time, and the environment was completely unknown, but the fundamental challenge remained the same: adapt, survive, and prove that humans could handle whatever the universe threw at them. Walking back through the academy's crystalline corridors, Alex noticed other students watching them with unusual interest. Word of the practical test had apparently spread through the galactic academic community faster than they had expected. "No pressure," Katie said with a nervous laugh. "Yeah," Ryan agreed. "Just the entire galaxy's perception of humanity riding on whether we can survive a week on an alien moon." Alex grinned. "When you put it that way, it sounds like just another day on Deathworld Earth." The transport ship's observation deck was crowded with Academy faculty and students from dozens of species. Alex stood at the viewing window, looking down at the small moon that would be their home for the next week. The surface looked like a harsher version of Earth's wilderness areas. Rocky terrain, patches of alien forest, and what appeared to be a small lake system. "Final equipment check," announced the Velcarian transport officer, her crystalline voice carrying military precision. She gestured to a small pile of basic tools laid out on a nearby table. 3 survival knives, 50 meters of rope, fire starting, materials, basic first aid supplies, and emergency extraction beacons. Dr. Velkanos approached their group, his crystalline body reflecting the nervous energy of the watching crowd. "Remember, this is purely voluntary. You can withdraw at any time without academic penalty." Alex looked at the assembled faculty members. Most wore expressions he had learned to interpret as skeptical concern. A few looked excited, as if they were about to witness something historically significant. Others appeared nervous, as though they expected to be documenting a disaster. "How many people are watching this?" Katie asked, noticing the crowd. "The test is being broadcast live to survival studies programs across 17 worlds," Dr. Velkanos replied. "Your performance here will be observed by the galaxy's leading experts in environmental adaptation science." Ryan whistled softly. "No pressure at all." The transport officer activated a holographic display showing the moon's surface. "Landing zone is here, near the lake system. Emergency extraction beacons have a range of 50 kilometers and will summon immediate rescue response. Surface gravity is 1.3 times galactic standard. Atmospheric pressure is 0.85 normal. Temperature at landing time will be approximately 15 degrees Celsius." Alex nodded, studying the terrain. The landing zone looked like good camping country. Water access, mixed terrain offering both resources and shelter options, and reasonable visibility for identifying potential threats. "Any questions before deployment?" the transport officer asked. "Yeah," Alex said. "What should we do about the wildlife? Are we talking about Earth-equivalent dangerous animals, or something more exotic?" Dr. Velkanos consulted his data tablet. "Predatory species are roughly analogous to your homeworld's large carnivores. Primary threat appears to be pack hunters similar to wolves, and larger solitary predators comparable to bears or large cats." Katie grinned. "So basically a normal camping trip in Alaska." The comment triggered a wave of nervous chittering and chiming from the alien observers. Alex heard fragments of translated conversation. "Treats lethal predators as routine. Considers mortal danger normal. Deathworld psychology." 30 minutes to landing," announced the transport officer. "Final preparations should be completed now." Alex, Katie, and Ryan gathered their minimal equipment and moved toward the landing shuttle. As they walked, Alex noticed the reactions of their observers. Some species seemed to be watching them with the fascination usually reserved for studying dangerous animals. Others appeared to be documenting everything for later analysis. The landing shuttle was small and utilitarian, designed for simple transportation rather than comfort. As they strapped in for descent, Alex felt the familiar mixture of excitement and nervousness that came with heading into unknown territory. "Landing in 5 minutes," the shuttle pilot announced. Weather conditions are optimal. Visibility is excellent. No immediate environmental hazards detected in the landing zone. Through the shuttle's small windows, Alex watched the moon's surface grow larger. The terrain looked more Earth-like as they descended. Rolling hills covered with something that resembled forest, rocky outcroppings, and the glint of water in the distance. The shuttle touched down with barely a bump in a small clearing near the lake. As the doors opened, Alex caught his first breath of alien air. It smelled different from Earth's atmosphere, cleaner somehow, with unfamiliar plant scents carried on a cool breeze. "Good luck," said the pilot, his voice carrying what sounded like genuine concern. "Try not to die on live broadcast." Alex, Katie, and Ryan stepped out of the shuttle onto solid ground. The gravity was noticeable but not uncomfortable, like wearing a heavy backpack. The air felt thin but breathable, similar to camping at high altitude. As the shuttle lifted off, leaving them alone on an alien world, Alex took a moment to assess their situation. The sun was bright overhead, indicating several hours of daylight remaining. The lake was about half a kilometer away through moderately dense forest. The immediate area offered good sight lines and several potential shelter locations. "First priority?" Katie asked, shouldering her share of their equipment. "Water and shelter," Alex replied automatically. "Lake's close enough for easy access, but we want our shelter site away from the water in case predators use it as a hunting ground." "I saw some good tree cover about 200 meters that way," Ryan said, pointing toward a cluster of large trees on slightly elevated ground. "Good. Visibility? Close to water but not too close? And the elevation would help with drainage if it rains." As they walked toward the potential shelter site, Alex found himself falling into familiar patterns from countless camping trips. Check the wind direction, identify potential hazards, note the position of the sun for navigation reference. The fact that he was doing this on an alien moon in front of a galactic audience seemed almost secondary to the immediate practical requirements. "These trees look perfect," Katie said when they reached the elevated site. The alien trees were similar enough to Earth species for their purposes. Sturdy trunks, strong branch structure, and what appeared to be flexible smaller branches suitable. For construction, Ryan was already examining the ground conditions. "Good drainage, solid foundation, and we can clear a fire circle without much trouble." Alex looked around the area with growing confidence. "This is going to work. Basic lean-to-shelter, fire pit for cooking and warmth, clear sight lines for security. We can have a comfortable base camp established before dark." As they began collecting materials for shelter construction, Alex noticed movement in the tree canopy above them. Small alien creatures, probably the local equivalent of squirrels or birds, watched them with obvious curiosity. Their presence was actually reassuring. It indicated that the area wasn't regularly hunted by major predators. "You know what?" Katie said, pausing in her collection of suitable building branches. "This is actually kind of fun. It's like the ultimate camping challenge." Ryan laughed. "Just remember that several trillion beings across the galaxy are watching us prove that humans can turn a wilderness survival situation into a recreational activity." Alex grinned as he began testing branch strength for their shelter frame. "Let's give them a show they won't forget." Above them, invisible to the naked eye, orbital cameras recorded every movement as 3 young humans began the process of turning an alien wilderness into a temporary home. Across the galaxy, survival experts watched in fascination as theoretical. Academic exercises became practical demonstrations of deathworld adaptation techniques. The real test was just beginning. Dr. Velkanos stood in the Academy's main observation center, surrounded by faculty members and advanced students from across the galaxy. The large holographic displays showed multiple camera angles of the human survival test, now in its third day. Around him, conversations in dozens of languages created a constant buzz of amazement and disbelief. "They're singing," whispered Professor Jenth, a Velkarian environmental specialist. Her crystalline voice carried notes of confusion. "While building hunting traps, how do they maintain such positive psychological states under survival stress?" On the main display, Ryan could be seen weaving together what appeared to be a simple but effective small game trap, while humming what his audio pickup identified as an Earth song called Country Roads. Nearby, Katie was processing some kind of alien plant fiber into cordage, occasionally joining in the singing. "Day 3 psychological evaluation," announced Dr. Helix, the Academy's leading expert in stress psychology. "Subject stress indicators remain at baseline levels. Cortisol measurements are actually lower than typical Academy dormitory readings. Either your monitoring equipment is malfunctioning, Dr. Velkanos, or these beings experience no psychological pressure from mortal danger." Dr. Velkanos checked his instruments again. "Equipment is functioning perfectly. I believe we're witnessing something unprecedented in survival psychology. They don't perceive their situation as particularly dangerous." "How is that possible?" asked Professor Grix, whose species had evolved on one of the galaxy's most stable garden worlds. "They have no technological support, limited resources, and are surrounded by predatory wildlife." On screen, Alex emerged from the forest carrying what appeared to be firewood and some kind of edible plants. He called something to his teammates that made them laugh, then began building up their campfire for the evening meal. "Because," Dr. Velcano said slowly, "this situation represents normal recreational activity for their species. They're not surviving, they're camping." The observation center fell silent except for the ambient noise from the broadcast. Faculty members stared at the displays showing 3 young humans who appeared to be having the time of their lives while demonstrating survival techniques that most galactic species would consider miraculous. "Impossible," muttered Dr. Zarek, the Academy's Dean of Environmental Sciences. "No species engages in voluntary exposure to mortal hazards for recreational purposes." "The evidence suggests otherwise," Dr. Velkanos replied. "Human survival literature describes something called extreme sports, activities that deliberately increase environmental risk for entertainment value. Climbing sheer rock faces, jumping from aircraft, swimming with dangerous marine predators." Professor Gent's crystalline form dimmed with what Dr. Velkanos recognized as existential confusion. "They seek danger? Voluntarily?" "More than that," Dr. Velkanos said, reviewing his extensive notes from the past months. "They've created an entire cultural framework around overcoming environmental challenges. They call it adventure, and consider it personally fulfilling." On the main display, the humans were preparing their evening meal over an open fire. The camera audio picked up their casual conversation about the day's activities, including Katie's successful identification of several edible plant species and Ryan's improvement of their water filtration system. "The plant identification process is particularly remarkable," observed Dr. Moss, a botanical specialist whose species communicated through chemical signals. The female human tested unknown vegetation using methods that would be immediately fatal to most beings, yet she successfully identified multiple safe food sources. Dr. Velkanos consulted his notes. "Universal testing protocol from their species, visual inspection, smell test, skin contact test, lip contact test, small ingestion test, waiting period for adverse reactions, then larger consumption, if no negative effects occur. She deliberately poisoned herself in measured doses? Dr. Helix asked in horror. No, Dr. Velkanos corrected. She systematically tested her tolerance for unknown substances using a risk management approach developed by her species over millennia of exploration and expansion. The significance of this distinction was not lost on the assembled faculty. What looked like reckless endangerment was actually sophisticated scientific methodology adapted for practical application under survival conditions. Day 4 begins. In 6 hours, announced the Observation Center coordinator. Shall we maintain continuous monitoring? Absolutely, Dr. Velkanos replied. And expand our academic analysis team. I want experts in evolutionary psychology, cultural adaptation studies, and comparative civilization theory. What we're witnessing here has implications far beyond survival studies. As the night cycle progressed on the test moon, cameras switched to infrared monitoring. The humans had established a watch rotation, with one person maintaining the fire and keeping alert for potential threats while the others slept. Their shelter, built entirely from local materials, appeared both sturdy and comfortable. They've created a sustainable base of operations, observed Professor Quill, whose species specialized in engineering applications. Using only hand tools and indigenous materials, they've established infrastructure that could support extended habitation. Dr. Velkanos nodded. According to my research, this represents typical human expansion methodology. Small initial settlement, gradual resource development, incremental improvement of living conditions. They've essentially begun colonizing the moon. In 3 days? Dr. Zarek asked incredulously. In 3 days, Dr. Velkanos confirmed, and they're treating it as a routine camping expedition. The implications rippled through the observation center as faculty members began to understand what they were witnessing. This wasn't just a demonstration of survival techniques, it was a preview of how humans approached expansion into hostile environments. No wonder they succeeded in reaching space, whispered Professor Jenth. They don't see hostile environments as barriers to overcome. They see them as new homes to adapt to. Dr. Velkanos activated his personal communication device and began recording a message to the Galactic Academic Council. Council members, I am transmitting preliminary findings from our human survival study. We may need to completely revise our understanding of environmental adaptation theory. As he spoke, the main display showed Ryan adding wood to their campfire while softly singing what the audio system identified as something called a campfire song. In the background, Alex and Katie slept peacefully in their handmade shelter, as comfortable and secure as if they were in the Academy's most advanced dormitories. The galaxy's leading survival experts continued their vigil, watching 3 young. Humans proved that the difference between impossible survival and enjoyable camping was simply a matter of perspective. And that perspective, Dr. Velkanos was beginning to understand, was what made Deathworlders unlike any other species in the known galaxy. Tomorrow would bring new revelations, but tonight the humans slept soundly under alien stars, dreaming whatever. Dreams came to beings who treated the universe's hostility as an invitation to explore. 6 months after the test, Alex stood in front of the largest academic auditorium at Zephyrian Academy, looking out at an audience that represented over 200 species from across the galaxy. The weekly Human Survival Studies course had become the most popular elective in the Academy's history, with students traveling from distant worlds just to observe Deathworld adaptation techniques. Today we're covering water purification, Alex announced to the packed auditorium. Who can tell me why boiling water makes it safe to drink? A young Aquinas student raised what might have been a tentacle. The thermal energy destroys harmful microorganisms? Exactly, Alex replied, activating a holographic display showing the simple setup they had used on the test moon. But what if you don't have a metal container for boiling? The audience grew quiet. This was the part they found most fascinating, watching humans solve problems that would require industrial solutions for most species. Katie stepped forward from where she had been preparing the day's practical demonstration. You can use hot stones, heat rocks in a fire, then use wooden tools to transfer them into a water container made from hide, bark, or even a depression lined with clay. Or, Ryan added, joining them at the front of the auditorium, you can make a container from certain types of large leaves, as long as you keep the water temperature below the leaf's combustion point. Dr. Velkanos watched from the faculty observation section, his crystalline features bright with satisfaction. The human survival program had exceeded every expectation, but more importantly, it had fundamentally changed how the galaxy understood environmental adaptation. After the demonstration, Alex, Katie, and Ryan walked through the Academy's corridors, still amazed by how much their lives had changed. Students stopped them constantly with questions about Earth, human survival techniques, and what Dr. Velkanos now called deathworld psychology. I still can't believe they're treating us like survival experts, Katie said as they passed a group of advanced students taking careful notes on human conversation patterns. We're not experts, Ryan replied. We're just normal people who grew up on Earth. That's exactly the point, said a familiar crystalline voice behind them. Dr. Velkanos approached, carrying a thick data tablet. You represent something the galaxy has never encountered before. A species for whom survival expertise is considered basic childhood education. Alex looked at the professor who had become both mentor and research partner over the past months. Have you figured out why humans are different? Dr. Velkanos activated his tablet, showing data that had become famous throughout galactic academic circles. Your planet didn't just produce an intelligent species, it forged one. Every day of human existence has been survival training that would challenge our best-equipped military units. But we're not warriors, Katie protested. We're just people. Indeed, Dr. Velkanos replied. That's what makes you remarkable. You've developed capabilities that most species associate with elite specialists. But you consider them normal life skills. A human child learns to navigate environments that would require emergency response teams for most galactic citizens. They paused outside the Academy's main communication center, where news feeds from across the galaxy played on holographic displays. Human exploration teams were suddenly in high demand, consulting on projects that had been considered impossible by galactic standards. Look at this, Ryan said, pointing to a news feed about a mining operation on a hostile world. They're using techniques we showed them for dealing with toxic atmospheres and extreme temperatures. And this one, Katie added, indicating another display. Human agricultural specialists are teaching drought-resistant farming on worlds that were considered too harsh for food production. Alex read the headlines with growing amazement. We really changed something, didn't we? Dr. Velkanos chimed with what Alex now recognized as deep satisfaction. You changed everything. For 300 years, galactic civilization has approached hostile environments as problems to be solved with technology. Humans approach them as homes to be adapted to. What's the difference? Alex asked. Technology can fail, Dr. Velkanos replied. Adaptation endures. Your species doesn't just survive in hostile environments. You thrive because you've learned that survival isn't about avoiding challenges. It's about embracing them as opportunities for growth. As if to prove his point, a group of young alien students approached them hesitantly. The group's spokesperson, a Velkarian student Alex recognized from their original survival studies class, addressed them with nervous respect. "Excuse me, but could you teach us the fire-making technique you used on the test moon? We're planning an expedition to study atmospheric conditions on a Class 7 world, and our professor suggested we learn human backup methods in case our equipment fails." Alex, Katie, and Ryan exchanged grins. The same students who had once looked at them as primitive curiosities were now asking to learn the techniques that had once seemed impossibly advanced. "Sure," Alex said. "Meet us at the practical training area after dinner. Bring some wood and tinder." As the students hurried away, chattering excitedly about learning Deathworld techniques, Dr. Velkanos updated his data tablet with notes about the continuing cultural impact of the human program. "You know what I realized?" Katie said thoughtfully. "We never actually figured out why Deathworlders never die." Ryan laughed. "Sure we did. It's because we're too stubborn to know when something's impossible." More than that, Alex added, thinking about all the conversations they'd had with alien students over the past months. "We never die because we never stop learning how to live. Every challenge is just another problem to solve." Dr. Velkanos looked up from his tablet. "Perhaps that's the real lesson here. Most species reach a point where they believe they've mastered their environment. Humans never stop believing they can adapt to new challenges." "Because we can," Katie said simply. "That's what humans do." As evening approached and alien stars began appearing in the purple sky, Alex reflected on how much had changed since their first day at the academy. They had come here as exchange students, hoping to learn about galactic civilization. Instead, they had taught the galaxy something about the endless adaptability of the human spirit. The experiment had started as a test of survival techniques, but it had become something much more significant. It had revealed that the difference between thriving and merely surviving wasn't technology or superior planning. It was the fundamental belief that any challenge could be overcome with enough creativity, determination, and the willingness to adapt. Walking back to their dormitory, Alex noticed new construction beginning on the academy grounds. The facility was expanding to accommodate the growing number of students interested in what academics now called applied deathworld studies. The program that had started with 3 confused human students was becoming a major field of galactic research. "Think we'll ever run out of things to teach them?" Ryan asked. Alex grinned, thinking about all the skills they had learned growing up on Earth that they hadn't even considered worth mentioning yet. Hunting, fishing, rock climbing, navigation by stars, weather prediction, first aid, improvised engineering, psychological resilience techniques, team leadership under stress. The list seemed endless. "I don't think we'll run out anytime soon," he replied. "After all, we're just getting started showing them what humans consider normal." As they entered their dormitory, Alex caught sight of their reflection in a hallway mirror. 3 ordinary young people from a small blue planet who had accidentally taught the galaxy that the universe's hostility wasn't something to be feared or avoided. It was something to be embraced as the foundation for growth, adaptation, and the endless human capacity to make any environment feel like home. The experiment was over, but the real adventure was just beginning.